Should 16-year-olds be allowed to change their gender?
Should 16-year-olds be allowed to change their gender? So this is coming off the back of what I was talking about earlier on, but this is specifically the Scottish government. Now, you might have seen there were these viral clips over the last few days of a group of feminists protesting outside of Holyrood, outside the Scottish Parliament, and this was organised by a group called For Women Scotland. Great group of people. We've had them on the show before. This hasn't been getting much coverage, but the Scottish government has introduced plans to lower the age when a person can get a gender recognition certificate from 18 to 16. Now, they say it won't change or remove women's rights, but there is a conflict here. For instance, this week there was a story in The Times that revealed that half of the 16 transgender inmates in Scottish prisons began transitioning after they were convicted. And 6 of those prisoners have current or previous convictions for sex offences. So you wonder, don't you, Francis, you know, look, of course people suffer from gender dysphoria, of course there are people who need to present as the opposite sex, but when people who are guilty of sexual assault in prison suddenly decide they want to be moved to a women's prison, red flags do start to emerge, don't they?
Are you trying to ruin my career, mate? Is that what you're doing?
You don't want to talk about this, but no one does. This is the issue.
Look, the problem is when it comes to an issue like this, is that everybody wants to be compassionate, everybody wants to say and do the right thing, but also there's a little something called common sense.
Yeah.
And we all understand at its most basic fundamental level that women's spaces exist for a reason and that women's spaces should be protected. And when anybody ever asks me and goes, well, why? Well, think of an example of a nightclub. If a woman, or when a woman, I should say, gets unwanted male attention in a nightclub, where's the one place that they head? The female toilets, because they know that they're going to be safe in that and the bloke can't come in.
Yeah.
Now, if you abolish these places and you abolish these safe spaces for women, what you are doing is you're putting women in danger. And we need to be honest about this and realise that these places are actually important and they're important for women.
So I think a lot of the stuff that's going through Scottish Government is based on compassion. I think it genuinely is.
It is.
I think people are thinking, well, you know, if you have gender dysphoria, if you need to present as the other sex, either through surgery or through how you dress or whatever, then we need to support those people. But I think the feminist point is extremely valid, is that if you're a predator, if you are someone who does exploit people, you can exploit that loophole, right, of self-ID.
Yeah, I suppose you can, and I suppose that's on their minds, and I suppose because they're predators, they have a strategy, and it's working perfectly for them. I mean, when I was 16, I would have loved to have been put in a men's prison, but...
That's a very different situation.
And,
You're a very special case.
I was very special.
I mean, the thing about this is no one is saying, which is what a lot of the detractors say, no one is saying that trans people are predators or more prone to being predators. They're not saying that. They're saying people, if you can just identify yourself into another biological sex class, then obviously that's a loophole that some people will exploit. I mean, that's all that people are saying.
Of course. And I think, you know, women, most women I know would agree, like what you said, Francis, that they prefer to have a space that's theirs. I mean, if not the women's toilets, then the gay guys Uber. I've driven a lot of women home. And I understood why they were terrified, because they're in a situation that seems untenable. They don't know where else to go, what to do. We need to make it any social situation as safe for women as possible. And
look, the reality is that the overwhelming majority of sexual assaults are committed by men. They just are, and that's the reality of it. Now, it's interesting because these clips were really fascinating. I was watching some of them online, and these were the protests by feminists outside of the Parliament. It really wasn't picked up by the media very much. This is Helen Joyce. Now, we've got a clip, I think. Helen Joyce wrote the book Trans When Ideology Meets Reality, and she spoke at the rally, and here's just a short clip of what she had to say.
There was never a woman in a women's prison in Ireland for a sex crime before 2015. And now there are 3, and they're all men. You are doing it here without the law. But you can row back. There's still time. I don't know how, but you have to. I'm still emotional when I think about the prisons. When I decided to write my book, I really innocently thought that if you said to somebody, but what about if you do this? You'll be putting rapists in women's jails. I thought they would say, oh, I didn't think of that. What can we say? They did it. They're doing it. Shame, shame, shame.
So, and it's an interesting one because this debate isn't being had, but the evidence is in. There have been cases of male criminals guilty of sexual assault being transferred to women's prisons and committing sexual assault there. It's actually happened. So this isn't theoretical anymore, is it?
I mean, there's 7 cases actually,
right,
in the UK,
and so it shows that it can happen. You know, if you believe if you believe in the notion of gender self-ID and you can say that anyone can declare it and they are therefore the thing they declare themselves to be, what about those 7 people? Are you saying that's right?
I've mentioned that to people, friends of mine, and they've said only 7.
Wow.
I said, isn't 1 enough?
Right.
How about 0? These women are already in desperate situations in prison. Oh, let's make it worse for them.
Unbelievable. And the women in prison are some of the most vulnerable women in the country.
That's what I mean.
It is kind of amazing. And I think just a debate, I know you joke, but it's true, like, having the debate puts you at risk to a degree. Like, people call you a bigot, they call you transphobic. These women are being smeared as hateful and monstrous, and if you talk to them, you're like, this is not the case. They're just concerned about their rights.
A lot of women don't want to hear men talking about their rights. There's that, too. They want to hear us going on and on about their rights. When,
but what if they need someone to sort it out?
Yeah, exactly. And you said men tend to be the most sexual predators because we're number 1. And I think that makes them feel even more insecure.
Yeah, of course. But this is one of the reasons why I continually invite feminists onto this show to talk about their issues, because they, so many of the channels are just not inviting them.
I've lost so many friends over J.K. Rowling.
Really?
People won't talk to me. They tell me to keep my mouth shut, that she should shut up. I'm like, why should she shut up?
Wow.
Because you don't agree with her?
That's really empowering, isn't it? Telling a woman to shut up.
Insane.
But that's interesting as well, because J.K. Rowling has never actually said anything remotely transphobic, right? And when I get in these arguments online, I always say, can you just quote the thing she said that's transphobic? Just one. That's all. Just one will do. They never, ever, ever, ever can. And you'd think they'd say at that point, oh, maybe she hasn't said anything.
I think part of the problem is we made, and both of you will understand this far better than me, is that we made such a hash of gay rights. Yeah. And gay people had to struggle for so long to be treated as equal, to be treated as equal right the way through society, that people are now looking at this particular issue and they're worried that they're going to make the same mistake that we made with gay rights, and that people are going to go through a hellish time just to be accepted. And I think what has happened is that we're trying to be compassionate, we're trying to be kind, which is, of course, a good thing. But in doing that, we're throwing the metaphorical baby out with the bathwater, where we're not actually acknowledging why women's spaces are so important in society.
But also, this is not the same as the homophobia of the 1980s and 1970s in any way. No. Because actually what this is a movement, an ideology that rehashes those old homophobic tropes. Why else would the CEO of Stonewall be saying that women who don't want to sleep with men, with people with a penis, are sexual racists? Like, that's what homophobes used to say. You just haven't found the right guy yet. So the idea of this comparison is so erroneous between now and 1980.
But in a way, in the 70s, the gay sex was better, so I'm hoping. Because we brought monkeypox back again.
Yeah. Scott, you were younger there. You were more virile.
More
athletic.
bendy.
More bendy. You were, weren't you? Very flexible. I saw the photos. Anyway, we're going to move